So welcome back, Investigator T. You have to excuse me tonight. I've got a cold, so I sound a little shit. Last interview, what can I say? It was a huge success in the MAM community. We had a lot of positive feedback and a lot of requests for you to do more. So it's definitely an honour to have you take your time out of your busy schedule to go through another Denny suspect with us.
No problems at all.
Thank you. Like the Ryan one, we will get straight into it. But again, just a shout out to Millbilly's research team. They've done a lot behind the scenes, so a big thank you to them. Have broken down this interview into two categories, general questions and the Bobby focus ones, and plus I snuck in a bonus question. The Denny suspect this time is Bobby Dasi, which is Stephen Avery's nephew. So if you're ready, I'm happy to get started.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so question 1. Bobby's age at the time of the murder was 19. What are the statistics at this age, this be his first kill and maybe his only kill, being that they were practically strangers? I do want to side note that this is, there's no record that he has any known prior convictions or any since, but I'm going to keep the fair balance by saying this is obviously a positive reassurance. However, I have to mention, if he did have any prior deviant history, it could have been because he was a juvenile and the juvenile records don't always show and are sealed. So, yeah, I just wanted to touch base on that bit.
All right. I was going to answer this off the top of my head, but I thought I'd better get some actual figures. Yeah. So I jumped on I think it was the FBI website. They've got crime stats going back years. But basically, in the US, because obviously this incident happened in the US, the average age of a person committing a murder in 2018 was 20. And I think there was the people who commit these acts between 19 and 29 commit around the same amount of murders as all the other age groups combined. So he's pretty much right in the thick of the stats and the chart, so to speak. Mm-hmm. As for it being his first offence, I'll answer this sort of from my own experience. It's extremely, extremely rare for murder to be their first offence. That being said, though, I have come across it before, but it's usually involved a clear motive where we've investigated things like insurance claims or like business deals gone bad or anything like that. But they were definitely older perpetrators. The younger ones, they always seem to have some sort of background that would indicate that they're, well, if not criminally minded, not pure as a driven snow either. I can't recall the primary offender in other murders not having a record at all. The only other thing I could think of in relation to that question is domestic killings. But again, usually, not always, the murder of the victim wasn't the primary goal. It was a result of an accidental stabbing or a fight over a gun and the gun goes off and someone gets shot. Stranger murders are very rare, but they do happen. But unless they're premeditated, like a serial killer type scenario, they usually result in something unexpected happening. So it's pretty rare, but it's not. It's obviously it's happened before, but it's not often.
Wow, that's interesting. Thanks for breaking that down, especially throwing in the statistics there. That was great. Thank you. So question 2, what is the likelihood that someone who commits a murder distance themselves from the investigation? For example, they're staying at their friend's house, they're avoiding going home, and at that time was only working with the state as a star witness against his own uncle.
It depends. It depends on the offender and what kind of circumstances behind the killing. Like I've known in the investigations that I've been involved with, I've known offenders that have gone to great lengths to disguise themselves or distance themselves from the investigation. They'll wear disguises or they'll put together alibis and leave town, while others have basically done the deed and sat around waiting for us to turn up and arrest them. I know it sounds odd, but I'll cite one occasion where I attended a murder scene where a guy had killed his wife. We turned up, all the uniform guys were running around, securing everything, securing the scene, and the husband was standing at the letterbox with the neighbours. I was just walking around, and he actually approached me and said that he did it. So I'm like, excuse me?
Wow.
Yeah, I just killed my wife. I'm like, oh, shit, okay. All right, so we dealt with that. But, I mean, it would make sense from a self-preservation point of view for someone to distance themselves from the investigation. But, again, it just depends on the circumstances behind it. Whether or not, like, I don't think there's the one with the husband killing his wife. I don't think that was premeditated. So, therefore, he didn't have any... He knew he wasn't getting away with it, so he thought, well, there's no point putting off the inevitable. Whereas others, particularly one I was involved with a double killing, it was premeditated, and that was the guy that went to great lengths to distance himself. So I suppose the premeditation of it will determine how well they're prepared to distance themselves from it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because like the last interview with Ryan we did, the flip side of that was him as a Denny. We covered him doing the opposite by inserting himself. So it's fair to say that both these possibilities is plausible. It just comes down to the perk himself and the individual of the crime.
Yeah, and what the motives were and how it's occurred, whether it was random or planned.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for covering that and so much detail. That helps. Question 3, the dismembering of the body. And again, like last question, I know in the Ryan interview you stated, sometimes it comes down to the overthinking of just not getting caught. Therefore, you would destroy any DNA at all costs, even going as far as burning and dismembering the body first. However, could dismembering of the body be also due to habit from, say, being a hunter? And I just want to say that, this is a general one because a lot of the people in that area, the community, are hunters. So this isn't just targeted as Bobby. It opens it up to the, other suspects and Denny's in the future. But, yeah, could it be habit?
You see, the way the case played out, I'm not quite sure if dismemberment would be required if the offender knew they were going to burn the body. Mm-hmm. Obviously, fire is going to disrupt the forensic chain of evidence a lot better than chopping someone up. Also, in this case, I don't see why dismemberment would be a logical step if they didn't torch the car as well, which yielded like a whole lot of evidence, some of which eventually used to put Stephen away. If they were going to dismember someone and then burn the body, it doesn't make sense if you're not going to burn the car as well. Having a hunting background, just on the surface, would lend itself to obviously being familiar with butchering, but I think it's a stretch to say that definitive dismembering of human bodies and even in the same ballpark. And I suppose you can relate it to if every hunter there is used to butchering their own kills, well, that doesn't mean that they're all capable of murder either.
Oh, and I totally agree with that. And it's funny because when I was sending you all the documents to go through, we went over the fact that his family actually had an incident with Barb's car being taken and burnt. So from the outside, it looks as though that they were no stranger to this kind of behaviour. Even though there was no conclusion of who actually burnt the car, it was just more of an insurance claim made after it. I think it's why there were so many questions, and it can be looked in several ways. Like, for example, was it going to be the final objective was to torch the car, but something went wrong, that he ran out of time, or having her bones burnt be a symbolical message from the real killer or law enforcement with the planting to give the illusion that this is the family's MO, that they burn stuff. It's just interesting you mentioned a burning of the car. It just goes hand in hand. I just wanted to cover that.
Well, it would be, considering the lengths that they went to dispose of the body, because the car is hugely significant. I cannot believe that the killer wouldn't think to dispose of the car unless it was left there for a reason. Yeah. We sort of know what I'm alluding to here, but because of evidence that was found in the car, if the real killer was, planning ahead enough to figure out either dismember or burn the body, then they would have torched the car as well. It just makes no sense to leave it there for investigators to go through.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I'm going to go to question 4, and, it comes in 2 parts, and I think this is the big one when it comes to Bobby being an individual Denny suspect, because I know a lot of people who this alone makes him look guilty as sin. So part A is the contents of searches on his computer history. I'm talking about the specific pornographic searches, the many morbid death searches, and the inappropriate conversations with the younger girls on MSN. Does any of those raise his profile of being a suspect?
In isolation, I don't think so.
Okay.
If I was going to be searching for something on the internet, it would be how to destroy forensic evidence, or what's the best way to get rid of a body, or what's the best way to throw investigators off my trail. And anecdotally, I think Bobby's search history could be the same as just about any male of that age on the internet. Mm-hmm. Especially these days. It could indicate that he was progressing from images of fantasy to the actual committal of the act. But for that to be present, I just feel there would have to be other enablers there, like some form of mental illness, or a previous deviant history, or a history towards violence. I don't, just based on what he's searching, I don't think that's enough to pin a motive on.
And which takes me to part B, basing that this is a sexual crime as motive and linking it to the searches on the computer. In your opinion, is it more likely that someone younger would be incited into sexual violence? Like, could he have been revved up by internet searches? As we know, he had been actively looking these up all morning, right up within the few hours Teresa was meant to have come to the salvage yard.
Yeah, well, obviously it looks bad, but based solely on the search results of his computer, I'll be wary of promoting a sex-based motive, just purely because there's no other corroborating evidence. In my old army parlance, we used to say 2 is 1, 1 is none. So without anything else to tie that in as a motive, I think it's pretty weak, I suppose, I think.
Yeah, that's fair call, absolutely. So I'll go on to the next question. After going through the many changing, inconsistent statements from Bobby made before trial, during and after, clearly showing he hasn't been truthful, it makes you wonder, if he isn't one responsible for Teresa's death, then why was he lying? Why couldn't he have just said from the beginning he didn't see her, he was in the shower? You got to keep in mind that this lie of seeing her head towards Stephen's trailer, that made him become the state witness and ultimately put his uncle as the last one to see her alive.
Yes, well, I mean, you figure out why he lied, and it's been proven that he perjurized himself on the stand. You're going on a long way to solve the case. You basically have to look at, well, what would he have to gain or lose? I think he lied because he was either coerced to do it from investigators who wanted Avery, or maybe he was just scared of having the finger pointed at him, and was relieved when the police believed his story and he became a witness and not a suspect, which, if you're recalling actual events, if you're making things up on the spot, it lends itself to inconsistencies in your story. But once you don't have the finger pointed at you, then you can pretty much make up whatever story you like. And I think I think you sent me something about him talking to his grandma about how he admitted lying or something like that as well.
Yeah,
so you figure out why he's lying. I think you'll get closer to finding out who did it.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to figure out who's got leverage on him and what Bobby would stand to lose or gain if he didn't do what he did.
Yeah. That's fair. Here he is watching the cops go after his family again. He has seen it firsthand with his uncle Stephen with the first case with Penny. If they want you, they're going to come and get you. So it comes down to the instinct, flight or fight. I guess if he wanted to, he just didn't want to become the next Stephen Avery and be accused of something he didn't do. Therefore, what you said makes sense. He made an ultimate decision, become a witness or a suspect.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, but then if he's just become a witness, if he was coerced, if he didn't do the act, then why was he lying about it? So there's some background there that I'm not getting. There's something that's motivated him to make up a story.
I know.
I don't know whether it was just because he was scared. I don't know.
I know.
I'd say.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. It's the backstory that we need to get the truth on, which takes me to the next question with Bobby, question 6. The scratches on Bobby's back, in your opinion, are they significant enough and have the characteristics of what you would expect from someone being raped or kidnapped?
In my opinion, no. I've attended thousands of incidents where, usually in domestics, but assaults as well, all sorts of crimes. And I've never, ever, like seriously ever, in 18 odd years, seen defensive scratch marks on someone's back. And it threw me a little bit, actually. I was like, I've never seen that before. Usually, I've just said never, but pretty much all the defensive wounds I've seen are either on their faces or arms or shoulders or that sort of thing. And they also, I had a look at the photo of the scratches, and they seem quite tame for someone who was fighting for their life. They don't look like the kind of scratch marks I've seen, which are usually quite deep, raw. They crisscross. Sometimes they're on different angles, different depths, and they look, because those scratches look quite uniform, quite straight. And when you scratch someone, when you're defending yourself and you scratch someone, sometimes they grab a piece of skin or something like that, and they'll create a little divot, or there'll be little, like your nails will dig in and grab a purchase, whereas other times they just slide over the top of the skin, and instead of piercing the skin and pulling it back, it just slides over the top and just creates redness. But these look quite uniform and straight. Also, with the spacing of the scratch marks as well, they look really uniform, like they're almost parallel.
Yeah,
and I've never seen that before. I don't trust those at all, to be honest.
Yeah, thanks for that. Absolutely. The thing is, to me, they don't look like puppy scratches either. But again, without knowing the true origin of how they got there, you kind of have to accept that they're inconclusive.
Yeah.
But to be fair, I have to disclose this. The scratches were apparently swabbed. So they were swabbed when he went to the hospital, when his pictures were taken. But again, without knowing the true origin of whether it could have been the puppy, but to me, it never looked like a puppy. I don't think so either. But it was just something that, you have to consider that, like you said, a victim going...
If they were alleged to be puppy scratches, they would be a lot closer together.
Oh, absolutely. And the puppy was only 8 weeks old. So, again, it's a bit of a stretch unless it's...
Yeah. But again, it comes back to Bobby lying whilst not having to. I'd struggle to say they were defensive wounds from someone who was being raped and killed.
Yeah.
Obviously, you never know, but they're definitely not a puppy scratches either. So if they're not defensive wounds from someone who was raped or killed, then why would he say they're his puppy scratched them? It doesn't make sense.
Again, it's like every time you think you could figure it out, something else comes up and you're like, oh, for God's sake. So it's like there's a lot of inconsistencies. There's a lot of...
Yeah, they could have been put there by someone after the fact. I mean...
Well, yeah.
Because they just don't look random enough to be the result of someone who's fighting for their life. They look almost premeditated, to be honest.
Yeah, well, you have to consider he was 19 years of age. Was he sexually active with a girl and it was done out of pleasure? That's why it had a semi-hesitation, like it was a sexual scratch, but not enough to, she's not clawing for her life. It was more of a pleasure scratch than you have to consider that this could be as innocent as the scratches come.
Yeah, maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't delve any more further than that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question, is there anything I have sent you regarding Bobby being connected to this case that you find strange, odd, or damning to him?
I don't see anything damning in isolation in itself. Obviously, everything put together throws a bit of doubt over his testimony and stuff, but the computer searches are interesting, but again, they're not on their own indicative of committing a murder. The scratch marks, I feel, I I just don't trust the scratch marks as being from someone who has fought for their life. They're not random enough, and they don't look like any kind of defensive wounds or marks I've ever seen in my career.
Yeah.
I do have an uneasy feeling that he's definitely involved in some way, but I don't think he was the primary perpetrator.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I don't know, if he had been interviewed properly at the start and his account interrogated a little more rigorously, they might have been able to get more out of him, because he definitely fits two of the three sides of the Denny suspect triangle. Yeah. And he has a loose motive with the computer searches, but it's not enough, I don't think.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned he may be not the primary perp, because it's funny you should say that, because with Bobby being one of the top Denny suspects, the common theory is that he had help. And these theories in the MAM community have split into two scenarios from what I have seen over the years. Like scenario one is he, along with another Denny suspect he was friends with, which I haven't discussed with you yet, committed the crime together, and again, the motive was of sexual intent. And the other scenario, and I would say confidently say it is probably the most talked about one, is that he actually had help covering up the crime with his stepfather, which again is another Denny suspect we haven't discussed, who ironically was also the state's witness, along with the fact he and Bobby gave each other a loose alibi by sighting each other in passing cars. So I just wanted to kind of tie that up with the loose ends with what you had said about he might not have been the main perp. He was just involved somehow, but, he wasn't the one that led this crime to be what it became. So I just find that really, really interesting you brought that up, because, again, over the years, it's a very common, part of when you think of Bobby as a Denny suspect or even a suspect prime, you have a lot of people break it into that category. Well, there's no way he did it solely by himself.
If my gut feeling is it was a sexually motivated crime. There doesn't seem to be any other motive that fits, like revenge or money. That's definitely not like a serial killer type scenario. She wasn't staged at all. In fact, she was burnt. Most serial killers will leave something behind and revisit the sites and that sort of thing. Right. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's ever cracked. That was the motive, but there's not enough to nail it at this stage.
Yep, absolutely. Based on the information you have been provided about Bobby and the case, could you give me an overall view of his star witness account at the Stephen Avery trial?
Star witness. Yeah, no, his testimony about is worse than the Titanic, I think.
It went down, eh?
I wouldn't trust that testimony as far as I could throw it, to be honest.
Oh, God.
You could tell that he was hesitant in his answers. As I alluded before, if you're recalling actual events, they seem, I've seen when I interview suspects, that they flow, whereas if you're making things up, you're sort of bouncing from one to the other, and it's easier to trip someone up if they're making it up on the go. Yeah. So I don't think his testimony is very reliable at all.
I guess it's a good time. It's a good time to add a fun fact here. Out of all the testimonies the jury heard, they actually requested to get the transcript or hear his account again. But ultimately the judge denied them. It's only speculation, but a lot of people believe that the jury also saw the inconsistencies and wanted to see again because they knew something felt off. I just wanted to touch base on that because, out of all the testimonies, the jury asked, can we please hear Bobby's statement again? And the judge said no. You'll just have to go with the notes you had, and we're moving on. So, again, I just really wanted to kind of touch base on that one. I think I want to slip in the bonus question here because it's before the closing question, but it fits nice. And I think you might have already touched base on it, but, in Kathleen reenactment video that I sent you where she provides a motive, proximity, and an opportunity to put Bobby as the leading Denny suspect, she has Bobby Flagger down. If the motive wasn't of sexual nature, because, like you said, there's no enough proof right now to say that's what it is, could have been more of a rejection? Like, in your opinion, could rejection being the key word or any other emotion be strong enough to commit such a crime?
Well, obviously, it has been in the past. I mean, you could probably find cases in case law where someone being rejected has precipitated someone being killed. But, I mean, he didn't know her, as far as I'm aware. There was no interaction between them. If his intent was to hit her up for some sort of sexual favour, then I don't think the way it panned out would be the actual way it panned out. I don't know. I don't think rejection would be strong enough.
Yeah,
that's why I'm struggling with a motive with Bobby, because I don't think rejection is enough, because it would have been the first time, and honestly, to kill someone, unless how I've said before, that killings sometimes occur because of an unexpected reaction. So maybe he might have tried to make a move on her, and she slapped him, and he snapped and maybe hit her back and thought, oh, well, I've got to go through with the act now. Yeah. But again, that was an unintended intention. He didn't mean to kill her. It just turned out that way.
It turned out that way. Yeah. No, that's brilliantly put.
Yeah, but for rejection to be based as a motive, I'm not too sure. But obviously, there doesn't seem to be anything else. They didn't know each other. There's no financial gain or loss from him killing her. There's no property gain. There's nothing there that he wouldn't benefit from it at all. His search history is interesting, but again, that doesn't lend itself to making someone a murderer. And he'd definitely be better prepared if he was winding himself up to that sort of thing. He'd be at least doing some sort of prep work or something like that, because that sort of thing doesn't happen spontaneously. It's a build up to the end act. Yeah. So that's what lends me to think that Bobby, he was involved. My gut feeling is he's involved, but I don't think he had the primary motive or even was the primary perpetrator.
Sure. Okay, so this is going to take me to our final question. So this is perfect timing. Again, it's going to be in split parts. Part 1, after reviewing all the documents, in your opinion, does Bobby fit into the criteria as a Denny suspect?
Well, he definitely fits 2 of the 3 sides of the triangle, having proximity and therefore opportunity. I think he's one of the last people. It's proven that he's one of the last people that saw Teresa alive. So he's had the opportunity, he's had proximity. Motive is the one that I'm sticking on. I can't figure out what motive he would have had to kill her on his own. Yeah. There's just not enough there to pin something like this on him just on his own. I think someone else might have had a motive, or if the motive to kill her wasn't present in his mind when he saw her turn up at the property, then I think it's happened as a result of something going untoward in his interaction with her.
Yeah. And so this is going to take me to the last bit, and it's the finale. We're now covering Ryan and Bobby as Denny's. Which one, in your opinion, is the stronger prime suspect now?
Ryan still. Oh. Ryan still, because he has previous intimacy history with her. Yep. He knew what her movements were, knew her habits. He would have been able to get close to her without having the same sort of defensive wounds that someone would expect if it was a stranger. Yep. And he just seems to fit the bill a little more. Maybe Bobby was roped in by Ryan later on. I don't know. But my prime Denny suspect at the moment would be Ryan. Yeah, we've done a lot of research. There seems to be no connection that Ryan or Bobby ever crossed paths or knew each other on any kind of level. But yeah, it just kind of goes like if the investigation was done properly the first time, you would have crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's and either concluded them as a Denny or ended up
eliminating them. So either way, it's
well,
one
the
of
reason
those.
I say Ryan is for mine, the main suspect is just purely because it's the vast majority of murderers know the victim. The vast majority. It's extremely rare to have a murder occur where someone kills a stranger, unless it's Bobby is the perpetrator, and then it's happened because of something untoward happening, like he's actually approached her for some sexual favour or some sort of sexual angle, and things have turned pear-shaped and he's panicked and killed her, which could indicate why the car was left with all that forensic evidence in it. But, yeah.
Well, that's another one I want to get you to dive down eventually, which I think a lot of my request is asking me to break down the law enforcement side with you of the planting, to show you all the planning and see whether you think you can make a determination whether it was law enforcement, a bit of both, or the real killer. So maybe we could cross that road very soon if you're up to it.
Oh, gosh, look forward to it.
I'm sure the viewers will as well. It's definitely one of the biggest biggest request that is filling up my messages daily is trying to get you to do, like, getting to do a breakdown of law enforcement. We want to know whether it was law enforcement that did all the planning, or whether Bobby did it, or where did Ryan come into it. So I guess we'll be making another interview phone call and doing some work in the near future.
Yeah, good.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you again. This has been absolutely brilliant as always with you. You're so, you got no biasm in it. You're straight down, you're honest, and it's really is. And again, it is your opinion. You're not accusing anyone of this crime. It's just, you've got the skills and the tools behind you to see things a lot clearer. So I think that's why a lot of people appreciate your perspective on this. So again, I just want to thank you so much.
No worries. You're welcome.
All right. Well, I will definitely touch base with you, and thank you again.
All right. Cool.
Bye.
Yeah.